In the misty hills of County Fermanagh, Northern Ireland, sits a crumbling cottage with a reputation so dark that even priests refuse to return. This is the true story of the Cooneen Ghost, a terrifying poltergeist that haunted a family so relentlessly that they fled across the ocean to escape it. They thought it was the house, but what if it wasn't? Discover the story that drove clergymen to madness and followed its victims across continents and left a legacy that still echoes today in 9 hollow knocks. There's a small house in Northern Ireland, hidden in the hills of County Fermanagh, that locals don't talk about. Not because they have forgotten it, but because they can't. In 1913, the Murphy family moved into this modest cottage near the village of Cooneen. They were looking for a quiet life, maybe some peace after hardship, but what they found instead was something that defied every law of nature and faith. Something so disturbing that bishops refused to intervene. Priests who dared face it became sick, paralyzed, or worse. It didn't matter what room you were in, whether you prayed, pleaded, or poured holy water. Once the sun set behind the hills, something woke up. And if you happened to be lying in bed when it did, you didn't just hear it. You felt it, moving under your skin. The worst part was it didn't stay in Cooneen. It followed them across the sea. This is the terrifying true story of the Cooneen Ghost. In the winter of 1913, a widow named Mrs. Murphy and her children moved into a house already whispered about by neighbors. A family before them, the Sherrys, had stayed there just one night before selling the place in silence 6 months later. No explanations, no warnings. At first, the Murphys tried to ignore the strange noises. It started with light scratching, a knock at the wall here and there. But then the bedclothes began flying off the girls as they slept. One priest who visited said he heard something snoring in the darkness beside him. When he lit a lamp, he saw the outline of a body forming under the sheets and then deflating, before swelling again and starting to breathe. He sat down on the bed and felt something slithering beneath him. Like snakes, he whispered. And then, when he reached under the blanket, he felt something move, not away from him, but toward him. 3 priests tried to investigate over time. One tried confronting it directly, using holy water and the sacred pyx. It hissed, it mocked, it played the Boyne water, a Protestant tune, just to show its contempt. It spat at him, lapped at his hand like a dog. It even slithered beneath him on the bed. Another priest, determined to disprove rumors, physically held the children's hands and feet down during an episode. But the knocking intensified, and then something punched him in the back. Both men guarding the girls were thrown off the bed by an unseen force. This wasn't just noise, it had intelligence. It could answer questions with raps, tap, and rhythm, even identify how many horse dealers were present in a room full of strangers. One priest nicknamed it Johnny, and Johnny didn't like to be ignored. The Murphy house was alive with noise, knocking on the walls and windows, heavy footsteps pacing in the attic, even though it was empty except for hay. Lights on bicycles and pony traps were mysteriously extinguished. Beds levitated, and dishes flew across the rooms, and groaning sounds echoed through all the halls. In one room, apparitions formed and vanished on the walls, seen by multiple witnesses. Even shapes moved beneath the bedclothes, as if someone were dying there, choking, gasping, heaving. Father Coyle attempted 2 separate exorcisms. During the first, sheets lifted from the bed. During the second, deep moaning and violent knocking filled the home. Outside the spiritual attacks, the Murphys were now under siege by their own neighbors. Rumors of witchcraft began circulating. The girls were avoided in crochet class, and when they sought refuge at neighbors' homes, the entity followed. And in the attic, a place that no one slept, the sound of hooves persisted, like a sheep or dog pacing above, even while someone stood there alone, confirming that the place was empty. One summer morning, a visiting priest named Father S. and a young man named James went to an unused room to investigate a noise that they kept hearing from above. It sounded like an animal, maybe a sheep or a dog, trampling around in the attic, but the attic was empty, just straw and chaff. And then it happened. Something rushed down from the ceiling, invisible but heavy, passing directly between them. It slammed into the floor and vanished into the earth. The room went still. James pulled up the blind, and that's when they saw it. On the bed across the room, the white quilt began rising and falling, exactly like someone was lying there, dying. You could hear it gasping and gurgling, its chest rising, choking, dying. 10 full minutes it went on, until whatever it was passed. Later, they learned a man may have hung himself in that very room. The priest suspected one of the older Murphy daughters, Annie, might be the key, so they ran a test. They asked her to lie in the bed, and instantly the air changed. Something rushed down from the ceiling, turned sharply at the wall, and stopped right above her head where the knocking started. When she stood up, it reversed, rushed back into the ceiling. They tried this 3 more times, same results. Another family member, Mrs. Murphy, lay in the same bed, and nothing happened. Whatever this was, it was attached to Annie. But the church dared not perform a full exorcism. The bishop ordered one, but his clergy refused, not out of rebellion, but out of fear. One night, a priest passed the Murphy home while carrying the blessed sacrament. The family begged him to help, so he entered the room where the children had been tormented for months. The bed was alive with noise, banging, thudding, breathing. He lowered the lights, and silently, without telling anyone, he pulled out the pyx, the sacred container holding the Eucharist, and made the sign of the cross over the bed. What happened next was so violent, everyone dropped to the floor. It screamed. It roared. It thrashed against the walls, against the floor, then silence. The thing was gone, for the night at least, but it didn't stay gone. Eventually, the Murphys fled to America. According to some accounts, they were never troubled again, but those who faced the entity paid a price. One priest collapsed with spinal meningitis. Another suffered facial paralysis. The third broke down entirely. It wasn't a ghost, the bishop would later say. It was something older, something worse. A poltergeist obsessed by truly demoniacal power. And it all started with a quiet knock on the bedpost. They thought the Atlantic Ocean would be enough, that if they just boarded a ship and left the haunted hills of Fermanagh behind, the thing would finally let them go. But evil doesn't follow borders, and whatever attached itself to the Murphy family in that old house in Cooneen, it didn't need bricks and timber to survive. It only needed them, because it wasn't the house that was haunted. It was the blood. The cottage in Cooneen is barely still standing. They're too scared to demolish it. Most ghost stories end when the house is abandoned. Not this one. Because the story of the Cooneen Ghost isn't really about the house at all. It's about what happens when something ancient, angry, intelligent sets its sight on you. And no exorcism, no border, no ocean can make it forget your name.
Johnny? Are you still there?